opened my eyes, and there was hell. It wasn't as gruesome as I had imagined, nor as hot. The smell was the worst of it, at the beginning.
Wake up.
A voice boomed from above. My eyes were open, but I couldn't make out anything in the darkness. I searched around me with my arms, and felt them ripped from my body with the force of a jet propeller. The magnitude of the dismemberment pulled me in and tore my body to shreds.
Wake up.
The voice spoke again, but I didn't listen. My brain felt like nothing more than an active electrical field as it attempted in vain to comprehend the immense torture I had just experienced. My body flailed like frog legs as it tried to translate my neural network's incoherent ramblings into movement. After about an hour, my brain came back to me, enough for me to realize that my body had as well. I stood up in disbelief and felt my skin with my hands. I had hands again, and skin as well. I crouched down and felt for the floor. It was concrete, and it was wet. I carefully reached forward with one hand as I felt for the source. I came upon a man's arm with my fingers and tapped it to get his attention. No response. I pushed it harder. No response. I pulled. Big mistake. The arm came loose as I stumbled backwards and was ripped apart again.
Wake up.
Being corporeally destroyed is not something you get comfortable with after one experience. It doesn't get better as time goes on, and you don't eventually get used to it. In fact, from my experience, it actually gets worse. A little over an hour later, I collected myself again, flinching at any phantom feeling my arms still had left. I crouched again and felt for the arm. I found it with little difficulty, as this time it laid directly at my feet. I must have dropped it directly where I recollect. I figured out pretty quickly that this arm was, indeed, my own. My body didn't recollect, as I thought. It recreates itself from nothing. Or perhaps the voice from above creates me again. It doesn't seem to matter either way. Here I am, and here I was. That seems to be the nature of this torment. I slowly reached the severed arm forward. I felt a strong tug. I held on tight, and sure enough, I pulled it back and felt its fingers had been removed. Just like fishing, I thought. I reached the arm behind me and felt the same tug. The thumb and the palm had ejected themselves from the wrist. I felt to the left, and the tug tore through about a third of what remained of the arm. I thrusted it to the right. No tug. The arm remained intact. I took a small step to the right after a few minutes of hesitation and waited for the blades of death to chop me up again. But they didn't. My mind scrambled anyway, searching for an answer. I panicked and laughed and cried and made sure to stand very still. I reached the arm out to the right again. Tug. I pulled back and felt the remaining 3 inches of flesh and bone. Now what? I figured the only thing left was to check in front or behind. I held the remaining diameter of the arm laterally to give it more length. I hesitantly reached in front of myself, and the tug tore through the rest of the arm, leaving nothing and taking the skin off my still attached fingertips with it. I pulled away from the pain and stumbled back. No invisible meat grinder. I realized then that hell was never composed of circles like Dante described. It's a maze. Without the arm to guide me, I resolved to using one finger at a time and became the captain of my own torture. It's pretty damn clever if you think about it. The torment isn't eternal, or even present if you don't want it to be, but standing still in darkness for eternity brings about its own special type of torture. It's a classic catch-22 situation. I reached out slowly with my left pinky finger to the left. I didn't prepare for the force like I had previously, and I lost my arm to the grinder wall. I screamed out in pain, but heard only silence. My pain was exacerbated by the fact that 5 potentially successful reaches had just turned themselves into one very real failure. I found myself longing for fire and brimstone. I composed myself again and held my right arm and left stub very tightly to my chest as I reached to the right with a careful finger. I let out a sigh of relief as I felt safety to my east. I took a step to the right and survived. A minor accomplishment for a newborn baby on Earth, a great triumph for me. Although I had already put 2 and 2 together, I still felt hesitant to call this place hell. The pain was unbearable, agonizing, and persistent, and yet the minor victories I felt after taking another step put me into such a joyful, accomplished mood that it nearly negated the pain of my muscles and bones physically divorcing. Nearly. After a few steps, I ran out of fingers. A few more, and I was armless. Before I surrendered my right foot to the darkness, I began to fear. What more could I lose after becoming a bilateral amputee? After a moment, I came to the conclusion that I had no choice but to continue as far as I could. I pointed my right foot to the darkness and stepped in.
Wake up.
An hour and a half later, I got back up with another resounding headache and stepped right, then back, then right again. How much progress could I realistically make before my mind was too destroyed from the pain to remember the way? The hopelessness of my unseen cage had slowly started to reveal itself to me. Still, I searched for the way out. The days went by, and then the weeks and the months passed. I'm sure it's been at least a few years since I got here. I never thought I might reach the end, until today. I saw the light, a long, straight tunnel. I ran and I ran. I stayed locked onto the light in the event the grinder walls still set out to erase my progress and leave me in agony for days. It took hours to reach the light, but hours mean nothing to years. I reached the light and pushed through. I won.
Wake up.
I jumped from my bed, and it all came flooding back. My life before, my wife and kids, the accident. I looked to my left arm to find a stub in its place. An empty hospital room fills my view as I rest my head again, relieved to be alive. But the relief I feel is disappointing compared to the success of making progress in that maze. It's been a few months since I woke up, and today is my first day back at work. I can't believe they'd let me get anywhere near the grinders again. Big mistake. I have to remember the accident step by step. I've been racking what's left of my brain to get this exactly right. I'll walk into the building, I'll look forward, and see the grinder staring back, taunting me, teasing me, challenging me to another go. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed that, please consider subscribing for more. I've been your host, Tom, and until next time,
Stay sleepless.